It's no longer enough to overcome the status quo. It's not enough to have exciting new technology. It'd be far and above and far and away better than your competition. Yes, you have to do that. You need a second playbook. You have to overcome risk and perceived risk, and you need to dig it up, and you need to uncover it, and you need to address it.
Hey everyone, just wanted to take a moment to say I'm really excited about today's episode. It's actually going to be a throwback with our good friend Jason Elmore, who has over 20 years experience in the industry, who is an absolutely amazing sales trainer and has helped so many individuals, but also organizations have success in medical device sales. And I feel like this podcast is going to be extremely helpful for all of you, especially if you guys are really new to selling or if you're trying to step your game up one extra step. So I want you guys to go through this podcast, take notes, because I know you're going to learn a lot. And I just want you guys to know, I hope you guys are absolutely crushing it, getting so much information from here. So let's get into today's episode.
And today we have our very good friend, Jason Elmore, who is part of Elite Execution Consulting, who has more than 20 years in the industry, now trains people how to be expert sellers, and is just a true expert and an awesome guy. So Jason, welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me. It's good to see you. And to the audience, thank you for all the input. We're really enjoying the DMs and the requests. A couple of our episodes, we've offered some things, right, from Elite Execution, and people are reaching out and taking them. So we appreciate that very much. But the feedback, as you can imagine, you send this out into the ether, and you wonder who's listening. Yeah. And it's so good to get feedback. So thank you.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. It's been awesome to see the interaction and how many people are really enjoying it, because I know you get the DMs that you send me and we get to see the screenshots, but it's like the amount of DMs that people are like, man, Jason's been so helpful. Like, thank you so much. I know a lot of the things that you're putting out are just helping so many different people. So it's just always fun to have you on the show and know your expertise are going such a far way, especially with our audience, and know that it's just providing value, which again is always the goal.
Yeah. On that note, we were talking moments ago about this. I've been intrigued, and this is a generational thing, so not to date myself too badly, but on my website, I offer personal coaching, one-on-one coaching to sales reps. And in my career for the past 25 years, working for some of the bigger companies, the training's been awesome and decent. And then obviously myself in the last 15 years, I've been the trainer, right? So, but a number of people walking into distributorship situations or disappointed associate situations, right? You've had a number of calls from people who are going to work and their TMs maybe aren't the greatest, or they're not in the top 25, or maybe they're just not great teachers. And there's some dicey situations where, hey, I'm the associate, I'm working for the TM and a regional manager, and like, things are going well, and the training was disappointing. Getting an opportunity to help quite a few people like that's been, and when I say it's intriguing to me, this is why. Coming out of school in 96, got my first job, got my first starts, and also started a family. I got married right out of college, and a lot of my peers were getting married and starting families at that time. And folks who are now in their 20s, a lot of them are putting that part of their life off right now, right? So there's a lot of them who are single, making good money, got good jobs, great educations, and really driven and really want to, succeed. And they have some extra capital that they're spending on, personal trainers, therapists, life coaches, really getting some great mentorship in their lives and choosing to spend their money that way. When I was in my 20s, I was spending my money on my first 3 kids. It was a little different, right?
Yeah.
So it's been intriguing, though, that people really are, and I think you made this point, putting a couple of $1,000s into their careers here early.
Yep.
To ensure they're covering for those gaps, covering for some things they're not sure they're getting, or they don't feel that they're getting, to ensure their trajectory is killer. We talked about this in a previous episode. Unfortunately, a lot of our success, for those of us who've been successful, can have to be honest and humble and attribute. I got to go to work for somebody who was awesome early in my career.
Yep.
I got to work with some awesome teams early in my career. I had an awesome manager early in my career. I know that was my story, right?
Yep.
Getting to work with really good people. And so if you find yourself in a position where just not, you can go on my website and we can talk it out, and there's some information you can get, and the one-on-one can be really helpful.
Yeah, no, exactly. And to your point, we were talking about this because like you said, I actually fit that mold of younger, late in my mid-20s, later 20s, doing well, don't have a family, so have the capital, want to invest and make sure I'm doing stuff. And it's what we talk about is like, it goes back into why we have our course. All we do in the course is save time and money. And that's what the conversation with you as well was, is that's what it is if I'm someone like the distributor reps who are, unfortunately, a lot of times I see the distributors just kind of be like, sink or swim, baby, let's go. Right. And they're all on their own, and that's how they're getting paid.
Yeah.
Like for me, that's where it's like, hey, if I invest $200, $300, whatever it is, over a couple calls, even if it's $2,000, all I think in is ROI.
Oh.
Right. So maybe it's 4 or 5 calls. I spent a couple grand, but now it's going to make me, I'm going to pay that back in one sale. That's where more people are starting to do it. And it's the same thing with our courses. We now know, people will spend the money because we're not $2. We're not the most expensive, but we do make a commitment for it. Like my talk with everybody is, we know there's a 30x return on investment in the first 2 months, just getting in. And if you want to put that into it, that's where it is. So just like you said, I do see more people now willing to put in that commitment because they are thinking more long-term, instead of like where people won't do that is, well, $200 or $1,000 or 2,000, that's a lot of money. But when you come into, hey, like what I just said, if I get on 3 calls with Jason or how many ever calls and it costs me $2,000, but I go make one sale, well, in the first month or 2 months, I'll probably pay that back. And then from ever on, I'm just going to make more money from the lessons I learned. I see more and more people doing that. And to your point, like we said, is I get calls all the time from associates and reps, but more of them are the associates who I just had 2 calls this week where the associates have a TM who's not performing like 70 or 80%, but that's who they're having to learn from. But these are 2 people that are both go-getters, but they can't overstep boundaries. Otherwise the TMs get mad, and then they have to go to the RMs. And then now the regional managers are getting involved because they have to, you see all this stuff. And the one moment I mentioned as well was, I'll see where these people, they call me all the time. Oh, I'm just trying to get hired by these big companies, the Medtronics, the J&J, Smith & Nephews, Invasive, Stryker, whatever it is. Once I get hired, I'm good. That's what they think. And I'm not saying there's nothing wrong with that, but as somebody who's been through those programs or one of them, and like know people going through the other ones, a lot of times their training is 1 or 2 weeks, and then good luck, go get it. And that's where your manager or rep comes into play. And if they're not that great, that's where the disconnect comes in.
Yeah, and the majority of those companies, to your point, offer fantastic product and procedure training.
Yep.
But not sales training.
Exactly.
You got to master your craft. You got to make some investments. We've all had to do it, right? We all had to read books and there's things you got to do.
The people who just have success, just being honest, the people who have success faster are the people who do that. They do, hey, I'm going to read the books. I'm going to invest in myself. I'm going to do it, instead of the people who are like, I'm just going to take the next 5 years, kind of go through it and just figure it out. And it takes way longer.
Right. So, for some of these people, it's one-offs, hey, I just want to talk to an account. But for the majority of them, they're looking at a syllabus and choosing what applies to their situations. Usually there's, 8 to 12 weeks of content where like, no, I want to know that.
After helping thousands of people break into medical device sales, we've received a lot of messages of asking for more personalized coaching and mentorship. Our average member breaks in 8.5 weeks at over $105,000. And if you're really interested and really motivated to break into medical device sales, you can click the link below or check out our website at newtomedicaldevicesales.com. See all the testimonial videos of people breaking in with Medtronic at over $170,000, at Abbott $175,000 as a full line rep. So if you're really excited and also motivated and wanting personalized coaching and mentorship, then go and click the link below, schedule a call, and we'll get you where you want to go. Enjoy the rest of the episode.
Let's dive into our topic for today. In a previous edition, we talked about the Challenger sale. Matt Dixon collaborated with Brent Adamson to write the Challenger sale. The Challenger sale came out of a black swan moment. Dixon didn't invent the Challenger sale. He observed it. In 2008, there was the financial crisis. And he got a chance to observe or somehow analyze 6,000 sales calls by reps from all different industries to find out what was making certain people win in a down market. And that's where the challenger profile came from. He observed people doing some things. It was really fascinating. He was just able to articulate what a lot of good people were doing. And every company tries to do this. They try to look to their leaders, who's winning, who's at the top of the charts, what are they doing? How do we replicate it throughout the sales force? He's done it again. And a really good friend of mine, Joe Bastone, who's also the sales trainer at Aaron Medical, super individual. If you ever get a chance to meet him or work with him, you'll be glad you did. But he brought it to my attention that, hey, Dixon's written the Jolt effect. And we were talking about its applications. It's very timely. And so Dixon has done it again. He's looked into a black swan event and come out with some really deep insights and some really good research that everybody in our audience needs to be aware of. So the Jolt effect comes from the COVID lockdown situation in 2020. We all had to shift to online sales calls, or a lot of us did. And that presented another opportunity. And he talks about this. The folks who came out with spin selling, that was based on research of something like, 100,000 sales calls or something like that. And they really thought it would never be replicated. The cost, the effort, the time to do a study that big would never be done again.
Yep.
But this black swan moment created an opportunity. And so what happened was he partnered quickly with some folks. They ended up recording 2.5 million sales calls. They transcribed the calls, used AI to analyze the calls, and they did it. I can't remember. It was like 8,000 different metrics they were looking at. Really fascinating research that we all need to be aware of, because the moment isn't over. COVID was 2020. It created this high level of anxiety in a lot of people. There was some geopolitical cities on fire things, upset the apple cart in our culture in a number of ways. It just heightened fear, heightened tensions, heightened anxiety. And I'm a dad. I've got 9 kids, 25 down to 7. I've got kids in my house all the time. So I'm around young people a lot. And if you talk to young people today, much heightened anxiety. They came of age, like if you were in the 6th, 7th grade 4 years ago, and that's all right? That's when you first started paying attention politically and otherwise. Very short perspective. But you can appreciate why they might be, a little on edge, and they're not crazy, right? And so this fear, this anxiety, unfortunately, is pouring itself into our businesses, into our transactions, into our efforts as salespeople to help customers make good decisions.
Yep.
And what the Jolt effect research showed was it's no longer enough to overcome the status quo. It's not enough to have exciting new technology. It's not enough to be far and above and far and away better than your competition.
Yep.
Yes, you have to do that. But in addition to that, what Dixon is saying is you need a second playbook. You have to do all that, and you have to overcome risk and perceived risk, and you need to dig it up, and you need to uncover it, and you need to address it. And there's a whole section in there around addressing risk and perceived risk, because unfortunately, over the last 3 years, this heightened anxiety has led to a lot of indecision with our customers.
Yeah.
So if it wasn't hard enough, right, it's gotten harder. What's interesting, though, is in a previous chat, you and I were talking about adoption curve.
Yep.
And adoption curve applications. And in the Jolt effect, they definitely doubled down on that. For instance, page 35, talking about the Jolt method, they said this: put another way, the best sellers qualify not just the ability to buy, but also on the ability to decide. Now, remember, he's talking about people who are fearful and indecisive. And it wasn't just that this physician does a lot of these cases. He works at this hospital. He's got a PA. He's got X-ray in his office, like whatever, the metrics are that make him like a good target. It's also about how he or she buys. Are they innovators and early adopters that buy early with less information, or are they early majority, late majority who need a lot of information will wait until a lot of other people have bought it, meaning there are different buying profiles, and you need to measure that and their ability to make and act on a decision as much as, are they a good target in these other ways? It was really fascinating information. You have to control inflammation flows. You have to anticipate needs and objections. And some of this thing they talk about radical candor, and the need to be a subject matter expert is huge, so that you're credible and trustworthy. So what is interesting is the work I'm doing with my clients in many situations is rebuilding their sales tools, giving them a vision deck and giving them a second deck that talks about the clinical data supporting their product. Now, there's reasons why we do that, but the Jolt effect specifically talks about this need to control information, pre-handle objections, those type of things. And that's what these sales tools do. And frankly, in some of this one-on-one coaching that I'm doing with people who don't feel like they were well-trained, what we really find is they don't have very good tools. They're not well-equipped. When you read Elite Execution, my book, one of the tenets of the book is tools dictate the rules. Now, that's true of our customers who, if they only have that tool, then they're going to do surgery that way. And until you come in with your new tool and change the rules on what it means to do this surgery, either more minimally invasive or expanded indications or whatever it is, right?
Yep.
Surgeons do the best they can with the best they have based on the best available information at the time. Okay? Yep. So when you meet them, they're doing the best they can with the tools they have. When you come in with a new tool and you change all that, that's fantastic. It's the same for us as sales reps. If your company doesn't give you a really killer presentation, if they don't give you really killer data and train you on how to present the data, if they don't have a really good onboarding process that makes customers feel confident that you know what you're doing and you can make this go well for me and I'm going to get good outcomes. If your company doesn't do claims reviews, right now, frankly, a lot of surgeon customers are hesitant to move forward with new products because they're afraid they're not going to get paid. They're not going to get reimbursed. So if you're not taking some of that risk off the table, if you're not demonstrating to them, hey, you had a great clinical outcome and you had a great economic outcome, you might be surprised that a lot of this indecision that you're experiencing with your customers, where you had a great meeting, they said all the right things, they were very excited about your new tech, and now it's been 3 weeks. Now it's been 3 months, and nothing's happening. The deal is stalled. And you might want to pick up The Jolt Effect by Matt Dixon. Understand these risk factors. The other one I would recommend is Customer Loyalty by John Larson. Also talks at length about reducing risk. A lot of our audience will remember this. Do you remember when Amazon used to sell books?
Yeah.
How did they become this behemoth selling us everything online? Do you remember the policy change they made that launched them?
No, but I was just talking about this, just so you know. I literally just had to go buy some stuff, and it's like in 2 seconds I bought it. Didn't even have to click. Literally didn't have to click anything. It has everything saved, and I was like, no wonder I'd give them all my money. But
okay, but that was a huge sea change in human behavior. For people to buy something online without seeing if it was the right color, the right size, without trying it on, seeing how it fit, all that kind of stuff. It wasn't until Amazon put a free returns, no questions asked. They took all the risk off the table with that transaction, with that policy, and they became a bazillion dollar, right?
Yep.
We need to take that to heart as sales reps. Now, here's the other thing that you and I were talking about earlier. This Black Swan event that was the impetus for the Jolt Effect research and information that we have to take to heart. It's also part of a bigger moment right now in American society. Our audience is sensing it and feeling it. They're seeing some headlines. They're talking to their friends. People have a sense something's up, something's changing, something's coming. People point to the upcoming election. People point to the economy. There's a book called The Fourth Turning. It was published in 1997. Sorry, I'm blanking on the two authors. It was a demographics book. Just smart scientists. But one of the things they observed was an 80-year cycle. And it goes pretty far back in Western civilization. They went all the way back to the 1600s in England. But it's a pretty simple concept. And it says this: you have an 80-year cycle. And that 80-year cycle is broken up into 4 pieces, 4 turnings, 4 generations, 4 20-year segments. The best example they give in the book is the World War II generation that came out of the Great Depression, went through World War II. The greatest generation lived their lives a certain way, according to certain values, certain standards, because they went through something very traumatic. They saw something pretty awful, and they lived through it. So that was that first generation. The second generation, their kids, the 50s, the boomers, they had this great life and this thing. They tremendously benefited from that first generation and those values. Yep. The third generation turn thing, sexual revolution, drugs, rock music, whatever, rebels against the values of the first generation. They rebel against. It's more. I'm painting with a very broad brush right now.
Yeah.
So I'm not doing it justice. It's more complex than this. There's a rebellion against the values of that first generation. And then that fourth segment, the wheels just come off, precipitating the next crisis. Now, some of the seeds of that next crisis are planted earlier, but you have to read the book to understand. But in our society, this kind of makes sense. And I think it'll resonate with a lot of our audience. America started in 1776 with the War for Independence.
Yep.
About 80 years later, you get 1865, the Civil War.
Yep.
About 80 years later, you get 1945 or the World War II.
Yep.
And about 80 years later would be 2025-ish, right? Give or take 5 or 10 years. So I want to tell our audience, look, you're not crazy. That spidey sense that's kicking in right now, you're not crazy, right? If this 80-year cycle holds, and there's reason to believe if you read the book pretty closely, yeah, we're kind of following that pattern to a T.
Yeah, exactly.
Then we're probably going to be in for something soon. Now, the thing to note, and I teach a high school class around this very concept, and the thing I point out is after every one of those things, the world gets better. After the War for Independence, the world was better. After the Civil War, things were better.
Yep.
After World War II, the world got much better. And while I anticipate something painful coming up, because I do, I think there's going to be a better world on the other side of this. This isn't the end. We're not nowhere near the end. This isn't the end. But I think my kids are going to inherit an amazing future. I think 20-somethings like yourself are going to inherit this amazing something that's coming next. But what I would say, just on a personal note, sales aside, right? We got to deal with this anxiety thing that's impacting your sales ability. I would say on a personal note, the world is going to get better after we push the reset button on a few things. This will be a time to lean in on your communities, on your families, reconcile some differences. This is a time to think about who you're hanging out with, who you're spending time with, who are you investing in, and shore up some of your best relationships and really ask yourself, who would I like to go through a crisis with? If you don't like the answers to that question, right? Maybe you need to find a new group. Maybe you need to reconcile. Or right now, there's quite a few people who are changing locations, right? There's people moving out of certain areas and moving into other areas, which is interesting. I
literally just had this text right before this. One of my guys that I'm friends with, even in med device sales, looking at moving to a new location.
Right on. Okay, well, I'm here in Idaho where a lot of people have migrated. That's fascinating. Focus on hospitality. Focus on friendships. Focus on family. Tighten up some of those loose ends. I don't think you're wrong. I think you're smart. I think you all are paying attention, and I think something's coming. That's not going to be fun. But I'm very, very optimistic about what's on the other side.
I think you do a good point on that because like you said, when we were talking off air, it's like we mentioned this. Does this have to do with sales? Yes and no. But the reason is like most of our people who are listening are smart, intelligent individuals. Like we see stuff in the world, we see things going on, but it's how can you not be so fearful of like, when's it all go to nothing? When do I lose it all? And now I'm screwed, right? Because just like everything, that's like why I get optimistic. And you and I have talked about this, but like when things go bad, that's when there's awesome opportunities. There's a lot of great opportunities to be in. And so even to your point, if you know how to sell and you do very well and you're learning the skills that you're teaching, these are just great big opportunities to what you just said, a better life on the other side.
That's right.
If you can go through it.
Yeah. So this is going to create opportunities. You and I were mentioning about that. One of the things in my class I talk to these kids about is being a happy warrior. And what do I mean by that? Well, you better have some convictions. You better know some things, right? You better be smart. Killing warriors is pretty easy. There's two things you got to be on guard if you're a happy warrior. You need good intel, and you don't want to get surprised. And so that's kind of the nature of these discussions is know how to spot some things.
Yep.
And be prepared so you don't get surprised, and have good intel on what's going on. Hopefully this podcast and other things people are looking at and reading is going to be helpful and pointing in the right direction. But that's it. That's all for today.
I love it. And the one thing I just think of real quick is what you were just saying, though, is like, I always joke around with our people when things are going good or like it's going really quick. It's like the Michael Scott scene where he comes out and there's a fire in the lobby and he's like, oh my gosh, it's happening. And they like go crazy. And that's what this is so you don't have the panic attack, so you don't freak out. I think about this as instead of freaking out, you're saying, okay, it's happening, right? Things are going to be coming. But if you can stay calm through that, why the whole other rest of the world is going to be going nuts and going crazy and all the news things that will come out. If you can just stay true to you, like Jason said, have a good community, have people around you that love you, care about you, and you can continue to grow with. And you go through this and learn your skills, be good at you. I always just think of what I think about. I've listened to all the motivational stuff, but many times it's when it's going to, during a recession or during the bad times is when the biggest companies come out of it. And so that's what I get really excited about with all of that is like, for me, I'm one of the optimistic, but I'm just like, oh my gosh, how big can this actually get if I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing in this time instead of everybody else's Chicken Little? Oh my gosh. It's going to nowhere. So I just wanted to mention that for everybody that is listening. I know you guys might be like, well, what did this have to do with sales and all this stuff? It's just continuing to work on your craft, continuing to be an expert, continuing to grow your skill set as you're going through this. Because like Jason is saying, there could be a couple hard years in the upcoming future. But guess what? If you're already planning for it and you already know it, it's not going to be as hard, A. And number B, and two, and B to that part is you now have a great opportunity in the future, because I can sit here and tell you I'm smiling. I get excited about this because just like we talked about, I do plan for it. And if it doesn't happen, great. I'm going to just keep doing what I'm doing, but I am going to plan for it. So if it does happen, I'm not going to freak out. I'm going to be like, okay, it's what we thought was going to happen. And now let's go make the most of it. And I just wanted to mention that for everybody, because that's the opportunity at hand that will be in the future. I appreciate you guys all tuning in. If you can, press that like and subscribe button. A 5-star review helps us grow this channel. And once again, Jason, thank you so much for your time. It's always a pleasure having you. And again, just your insight. It's always fun to have a different insight and things that you've been there. You've had 9 kids as someone who I just have a dog, right? So being able to talk to someone who's lived a little more life and been able to see this more and more, it's fun to get the insight. So really appreciate you taking the time today.
It was great to talk to you. Have a great day.
All right. See you guys.